Well, let's jump in. I don't even have an agenda slide because all we're going to talk about today is AI. So let's jump into that right now. Before we jump into AI, it is really important to talk about the infrastructure, and I do want to spend a few minutes to talk about that. Fundamentally, we need to make sure that people using AI on an educational tenant are not, for example, trying to find out where certain people live or what the grades of someone are, or social security numbers for payroll and all that. Those obviously there needs to be guardrails in place so those that can access those things get access, and those who shouldn't be accessing that don't have access. That starts with identity. So Entra ID, which we used to call Azure Active Directory, that's the starting point so that you can identify who the people are, and then you can apply compliance measures accordingly. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to make sure that we identify that getting the infrastructure set up is massively important. On top of that, I would say Intune we have noticed is literally life-saving. We're talking about, or not life-saving, time-saving. We're talking about AI today in the guise of time-saving, right? That's why AI is so amazing, is it makes us more productive. If you're not using Intune now to manage devices, that is an easy first step along this AI journey so that you can be cloud managed with your devices. Again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Intune. Stephen even has a link for you. You can put in chat here about how New York City Public Schools is using Intune to manage 6 platforms from one pane of glass. So getting to the cloud for management is going to be really important as part of AI. So identity and compliance, managing things via the cloud, then use what's free. So that's the second point here, the middle layer of the cake. There's a lot of free AI resources. We're going to spend most of our time in this presentation talking about those. And then thirdly, you need a great device. Now, we can do a comparison, but for example, if you have a Copilot Plus PC versus the PC I have, which is about 3 years old, and you are searching things on Copilot for Bing, such as, hey, create a picture of me of students in the Cubist style, then it will take about 20 to 25 seconds on my computer. I think it'll probably take less than 5 seconds on a Copilot Plus PC. So the reality is the PC you're using does matter to some degree. And so that's important too to think about. We're going to spend almost all of our time though talking about this middle part. So to make this real in Microsoft products, what does that mean? Let's start with what's free. So Windows, anybody with a Windows machine gets Windows Copilot. It's part of Windows. So I'm calling that free, right? You did have to buy the device, but we're giving Copilot as part of Windows. Copilot for Bing is included. Heck, you can use it as anybody can use it. If you want to use it in an educational tenant, we'll talk about the benefits of that, but that's included right now. You can do that right now for free. Assuming you have educational licensing with Microsoft, which the vast majority of you do. Next, obviously, once you've proven out the value of AI on what's free, you can start to say, hey, we want to pay for example, Copilot for Modern Work because we've seen the benefits of the free stuff and we think it will make an even bigger impact on our productivity. Absolutely true. And then you can even go to the point of using Copilot Studio to build your own AI solution. We have examples of each of these I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But again, our focus today is going to be on this first part on the left. So in that regard, what are some things about Copilot we should think about as we go through this? I'm going to focus on the two on the right. If you're using Copilot as part of your, you've logged into your credentials with your educational entity, then you have no knowledge cutoff. Versus if I'm just logged in at home on my personal computer, there is a knowledge cutoff on Copilot for Bing. So that is a huge difference. Obviously, you get the commercial data protection that Microsoft provides via your tenant. If you're on the commercial tenant, you do not get that on the consumer version. Those are two huge aspects, of what Copilot provides. as we use it, even on the free things we're going to be talking about. Okay, I talked a little bit earlier about people are already using AI and already seeing productivity benefits. So let's highlight some of those briefly. We can at the end if we need to, and you want to see the actual case. Each of these is a case study, or at least has as a written reference. So you can learn more about them and what they're doing. But I want this session to be very usable for you, not just theoretical. So we're going to talk about learning accelerators like Washington School District, which many of you may know is outside of Seattle. They are using these already today in the classroom. Wichita Public Schools in Kansas is using Copilot for Bing to help them in a variety of ways, one of which is that they have 128 languages spoken in the district. So how they can use that across the Microsoft tools to make teacher-parent communication better, to help with reading, et cetera, et cetera. They've included that. So those are primarily focused on the tools that are free, included with Microsoft licensing. The bottom two, so University of Michigan is using AI with really a focus on equity, accessibility, and privacy. Part of that certainly has been using bots to help with IT support. But they've really focused on these goals throughout the life and journey of faculty, and students. And so it's a pretty impressive story. And then Sao Paulo, most populated city in the world, the state of Sao Paulo has gone all the way to the right on my previous slide. So they actually have built a custom AI solution with Azure Studio. They're grading every essay with that solution. They're saving time for every teacher that would, instead of grading, now has more time available. So, they can quantify it for you directly. It's not something I should do on a recorded line, but the reality is they're seeing massive teacher savings in time every week, every month, because they've implemented this solution. So it's being used now. Already seeing benefits in districts and higher educational institutions around the world. So let's jump in now to what these things are that are available to you. So Windows, like I said, anyone with a Windows machine now that's on 10 or 11, particularly the new 11 machines, give you Copilot as available, right? What does that mean? Well, the reality is that fundamentally it means you can just write in things with words instead of knowing how to find them in the menus. So, for example, turn on dark mode, play this playlist in Spotify, start a focus session, which will create do not disturb, won't give you no announcements, etc. We'll set a timer for however long you set. Take a screenshot, etc. So you can see some of the things here, but the reality is now you could just type this into Copilot instead of trying to find it menus. And secondly, you can also speak it into Copilot if you'd rather. And again, that may save you even more time. So these all save incremental amounts of time. I wouldn't say any of these is going to save you a massive amount of time per day, but it does add up pretty quickly, actually. And again, included in Windows. So we're not charging anything extra for this. All of it's available. In that regard, I'd encourage you all to move to 11. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. There's huge security benefits and the speed of access with Copilot, which we talked about, getting a newer machine. And so obviously Stephen and others can talk to you about that with Into Support coming in about 12 months. All right, so now I'm going to jump into, I've broken this out a little bit by students and teachers and then higher ed specifically. I know there's a mix of folks on the call. A lot of what I have in K-12 actually applies to higher ed as well, so I'll highlight that. But the examples I'm using in this particular section are going to be focused on K-12 students. So we have something called learning accelerators. These are included with, excuse me, these are all included with your existing Microsoft licensing. Now, I don't know the specifics of your licensing, but the vast majority of you own Microsoft licensing and have access to these tools already included with your licensing. So as we've developed them and launched them, we have not charged for them. We've just put them into the licensing. that's already out there. These tend to be in Microsoft Word's Progress and Coach apps. So Reading Progress, Reading Coach, Math Progress, Math Coach, etc. As you can see, there's 6 of them. Well, Insights is more of the back end on it, so it's not a Progress and Coach app. Math is currently in the private beta, right, in private preview. So that will be launching soon. We've talked about that in multiple public locations such as ISTE. So I will not demo it today. We're going to zero in on reading and speaking because data indicates those 2 probably of these 6 are the single most important in terms of development and education. So I'm going to spend my time there, although we could certainly spend time in other places as well. That's where we'll focus today. Now, again, included in existing licensing. Okay, so Reading Coach fundamentally changes how reading assessments are done and how reading assignments are done. So this is the video I probably will share because I think it's very powerful in going through step by step what happens. But at a high level, we know learning to read is probably the single most important thing in education because it opens up everything after that. And we know people that, read on time or early tend to be more successful in their academic career. The challenge, of course, in reading coaching and reading progress in the classroom today without the apps is that, you've got K-12, you've got 40 kids in a classroom, probably a public school classroom. How do you do reading with everyone or most of the people at different reading levels and get an assessment, provide feedback, coach them on what they should be doing to get better? And then how do you do that 40 times in a classroom environment where you have to be able to hear each person specifically? So I've heard different estimates of how long this takes, but it's certainly, I would argue, at least a day from what I've heard. And obviously it needs to be done more than once. So there's multiple times throughout the year where this is done. In using our apps, it takes about 10 minutes for the whole class to do this. So that is an immediate time savings for teachers. You all probably know this, but certainly in K-12, the number one thing we hear from superintendents is related to teachers. So, hey, I can't retain teachers. We can't pay them enough. They're overworked. I have more retiring than are coming in. So having the ability to save teachers time so that you can then drive retention has been a huge focus in certainly in the superintendents we've talked to. And these apps literally do that and can start from day one. So that's why we're going to spend a little bit of time here. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which has some video, and we'll go through what this experience looks like because I think a demo is better than me talking. So this is a little over 2 minutes. So let me know if there's any problems, but I'll click on it now. There is some time with no talking, so that's supposed to be the case. You get to pick your story, right? So you get to decide what the story's about, which drives interest for the student. And you can see here that they're choosing parts of the story. Obviously, every student can do that differently. They'll be told what reading level to be. Right? The teacher will say, hey, you're 4th or 2nd or 1st, etc. Now let's listen as she does this. She's going to change some of the background and make it easier for her to read. Change the font, change the size.
Curious.
Right? You can click on the word to learn how to pronounce it. Now here she's going to go.
Lobo the dog was always curious about the world beyond his backyard.
So now the results are the teacher sees them immediately. And the student as well can see them. So the student knows what they can do to do better next time. The specific words to practice. You can break it into syllables.
Colorful.
You can have it say it for you.
Colorful.
Then the student
Great
speaks
reading.
And obviously you get some feedback as part of the process. So the word I want to make sure that you see that it was customized at the beginning, which drives interest. Then obviously as you progress and improve, you unlock rewards. You can see the accuracy here, and then obviously you can move to the next reading level, or you can change the story to different characters in a different story. Again, all of the output is seen by the teacher on the back end, by student and by class. So I'm going to skip to the next slide now, but I think you got a good view there of what Reading Coach and Reading Progress looks like on a day-to-day basis. Data shows, I have the link here. Can also, I think Stephen can put it in chat as well if that's more helpful. Basically, there was a study done by Fresno Unified down in California where they had a group of students that used Reading Coach and Reading Progress through the year, and then a group of students that did not. And data shows that reading scores improve for the folks using Reading Coach and Reading Progress. So it isn't just about saving teacher time. You can see there where it saves teacher time because the teacher doesn't have to be involved in the assessment. There's no volunteer or teacher or staff member involved in the assessment, but also reading scores improved. So it's a win-win, right? Achieving those significant objectives of learning outcomes for students and trying to reduce the time commitments on teachers. All right, I'll pause here for a moment. Any questions so far? I can't see hands, so someone will have to tell me if there's hands.
Looks like no questions at this time.
All right, we'll keep going. So the next one I'm going to talk about is speaker progress and speaker coach. I'm going to talk about this one because I think it applies both in higher education and K-12. And again, because of how important it is in the working world, you can see some statistics here that, you know, companies saying that only 42% of workers are proficient in business communication, whereas almost everyone needs it in their industry. So again, a massively important skill in speaker progress and speaker coach, just like the previous reading progress and reading coach, has a similar approach where it will be, there's a back and forth where the teacher provides an assignment, so to speak, and the student does it, but the teacher is seeing all the data on the back end. So this is another video here where we can see this progress. I don't know that we'll go through the whole video, but I do want the part of it that I want you to see is how the educator can create the assignments. So this happens as well in reading progress, but we didn't show that in the video. So it's important to see that in Teams, the teacher or faculty member can create the assignment. And obviously Teams is connected with many of the LMSs as well. And so you can create the assignment with the grading and rubric, etc. So let's take a look at this one. So here you can see they're creating a speaker progress assignment. You're going to turn on, it's prompting you on specifically how to do this in Teams. Give them a time limit. How many attempts do they get? This is what it's going to assess on. And then you can create the assignment right here in Teams. So that's pretty amazing. Now we're going to look at, now the student sees it. Okay, here's my assignment. Now we're on the student view. They're reading through the assignment. They turn on speaker progress. They're going to start their assessment now. So here, getting the countdown. Okay, and actually, while I have the video sound on, you don't hear them, but they're giving their speech, right? They've recorded it. Now they're going to get their feedback, just like in reading progress. Reading coach, you see your feedback and what you need to do and how you can do better, how you can do it better. The teacher then, or the faculty member, professor, will see it as well. So again, same approach as Reading Coach, Reading Progress. Now this is the educator's side of it and their perspective, their view of what they see. So I'm going to stop there. So again, same idea, coach progress. You can assign in reading coach, it's more about assigning a reading level. In the presentation one, it was about how long do you want it to be, what are you going to assess, etc. But the idea being that the teacher, again, doesn't have to go in and listen to the speech individually and do the grading and do the, hey, here's what you need to do better and here's how you can improve. All that's done automatically, so the teacher just sees the results. Now, of course, they can go in and listen to what was submitted. They can absolutely do that, but this saves significant time and also helps identify things in the classroom that may be consistent across multiple students. So that's presentation coach. We do have search coach and search progress as well. This one is newer. It's a little bit different. This one actually is about building digital literacy by searching. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but fundamentally this helps students realize the difference between .com, .org, .edu, .gov. It helps them see like how often was a website updated. What are you using a reliable source, i.e. like, hey, are you using Wikipedia or are you using a research site? So all of that funnels in and the teacher gets a view of what the class is doing. And then what, hey, are a lot of people maybe making mistakes, or hey, do some students find this site that's really powerful and really helpful, but others didn't? And again, so they can get this view of how people are doing their research so that they can provide learning guidance throughout that process. So again, building digital literacy here. So I'm pausing now on those. Those are called learning accelerators. They're built into existing licensing. So you should see them today. And as I mentioned earlier, case studies of districts already using them for results, including Fresno. That saw reading improvement for students that use the tool. All right, I'm going to pause again. Questions? Okay, so we're going to jump in now. Those are all AI driven. We're going to continue to talk about this from a teacher view. I tend not to spend a lot of time on this section because it's a repeat of a lot of what we just showed, but this is now the teacher views on creating the assignments and what they see for the outcomes. So again, you can create a rubric and how you want it graded, for example. So step by step. So each of these videos is helpful. And again, we can share this if you want to do this in your districts or in your higher ed institutions as well. Okay, so we're generating rubrics so that the AI can do the grading fundamentally. And again, I've heard two things from teachers that are most frustrating. One is parents, and two is grading. Not that there aren't positives to both of them, but the reality is that they take a lot of time, particularly parents, that they think they could use in different ways. And then grading takes a lot of time. So ways that we can help them do that faster likely increases retention of teachers, which is in the superintendents we've talked to tends to be in the top 1 to 2 things that they're focused on for the year. All right, so generating instructions. Again, I don't need to go through each of this in detail, but I want you to see that all the details there and all of this is already built into Teams so that teachers can do this right now. Here's another one I wanted to talk about. So we say that this is part of Word, which means that you would have to pay for it, but you could also do this in Bing, which is why I have it here. So in Copilot for Bing, you can give this prompt and it will provide the output. It just won't be in Word, right? It'll be in Bing. So you're gonna have to copy and paste it and put it into Word and do a little formatting. But I'm pretty sure that this is gonna save you a lot of time. And the point here is for Substitute teaching, obviously, if a teacher is leaving on a planned absence, that's one thing. But if a teacher is sick and there's no planning available and somebody has to jump in and teach something, particularly subjects that tend to be harder, such as math or calculus, for example, which I know is math, but I'm saying it's hard to get a substitute to jump in and be able to do that without notice. And these prompts, this is an example, but it allows you to create a lesson plan on the fly based on existing standards. And this will take you what, 2-3 minutes to type all this out and get it get it up on the screen in Copilot for Bing. And so again, huge savings in a real world application that happens all the time. Okay, I'm going to move now to talking about higher education and specific elements for higher education. Although I do think presenter coach would be very super valuable in higher education from who we've talked to as well, but these will be more specific for higher ed. When we look at higher ed, obviously there is a broader breadth of what's happening day to day for staff at a university or college, because research is often involved as well. And so we don't have time in this webinar to go through all the different options, but certainly we've written down 10 here on ways that we can, that would be of value. And I'll give a couple of examples now too. And I'll include some K-12 examples. Right, scheduling is really hard for humans and super, super easy for AI, right? AI knows how many rooms you have in a given building. They know how many students are taking a particular class, whether it be K-12 or higher, it doesn't matter. And they know what professors or teachers can teach that class, and they can do all of that work, right? So the AI just does it really quickly. Having to do that old school is a lot harder. So that's one example that applies to both. This is more of a K-12 example, but bus schedules, same thing. How many kids need to be picked up? How often? What's the right route? What's the most efficient route? Et cetera, et cetera. So all of these back office things that require a lot of time and effort can be optimized using AI. Now let's jump into a researcher specifically. So again, we've made this researcher up. So we've in talking with researchers, these are some things they do on a regular basis that we've included in the day. Now, obviously, I didn't create this slide. This slide shows a lot of our Copilot for M365, which is a paid-for portion of Copilot, but I at least wanted to highlight what would be possible throughout the day and how it could be used. I would say that the feedback we get most often on what's in Copilot for modern work, what's the one or two things you would highlight immediately that help teams, and summarizing meetings and action items is massive. Most everyone I talk to goes to that immediately and say, I've had multiple people, right, don't work for Microsoft, so they can use any platform they want, and they said, hey, we've switched to Teams because of this feature. Like basically that one feature and how much time it saves them. Secondly, being able to create documents where AI is doing most of the work and you're not is massively helpful. I've found it also helpful to be able to do this verbally. So most of us speak faster than we type. So in the Copilot window, right, we can do Windows H, which opens the microphone, and we can, or you can click on the microphone logo that's already there in Copilot, and you can just start speaking and telling Copilot what you want, and then Copilot will do it. So that is an even more efficient way of doing this. And creating documents or slides as a baseline starting point, it gets about 80% of the work done for you. And again, I don't know how many documents or slides everyone creates every day, but professors and employees at universities do this a lot, and this is a way that saves time really quickly. All right, I think I've actually talked through a lot of this already. We didn't talk about building your own copilots. I'm not going to talk about that today. Again, I gave you an example of somebody who's already doing it. But the reality is it's possible. In Sao Paulo, they created their whole structure themselves. All right. This is the number one request I get from when I go talk to people about AI is, can you give me some prompts that I can use every day that will save me time? And so I have picked some common prompt or common scenarios across either K-12 or higher ed, and including some prompts here that literally you can copy and paste and use. And I will tell you anytime that they're not, it wouldn't be Copilot for Bing or Copilot for Windows, which are, already included. But the point here is, again, we're focusing on those that are already included. So this is a video, and I'm going to show this video, but basically, while this is a K-12 example, this is a very relevant in higher ed as well, which is about summarizing documents and drafting an email. Now, after I show the video, I'll talk to you about which parts are free versus or included in licensing versus not. This example is meant to be what's included in licensing. So let's jump in.
I just got this new memo from my district office about using AI and Copilot to be more efficient in my day-to-day. There's quite a lot of information here. Why don't I go ahead and ask Copilot to summarize this and give me some information about it? I can go down to the text input and I can use my microphone to talk to Copilot naturally, as if I was speaking to a person. Let's go ahead and use that microphone input button to get started. I'm going to ask Copilot, I can speak to it, or I can even type to it. So, Copilot, can you summarize this PDF for me, please? Copilot will begin to summarize the article by searching the page for pertinent information. It will then take that information and give me a summary right here next to the actual document. Now, because I originally spoke to Copilot to ask it a question through natural language, it'll begin answering me.
Sure, I can summarize this PDF for you. Here are the main points.
I can stop the audio response as well by just clicking. Now, I can review the summary that Copilot has put together for me, but it is still quite a lot of information. Why don't we dig down a little bit deeper? I'm going to type in another prompt here and see if Copilot can give me a little bit more specific information so I get just the highlights to include in my upcoming all faculty email about using AI. And just like that, Copilot has gone ahead and given me just the key statistics. There is quite a bit here. You know what looks really promising? This top one, where there's 70% of Copilot users said they're more productive and 68% said it improved their quality of work. I'm going to copy this and I'll save this over to my clipboard to use a little bit later.
All right, so everything that was just done in that video is part of a Copilot for Bing. So all of that would be free. And obviously the commercial protection part is part of having a licensing with us and having a tenant, but the reality is you can do this. So that was pretty cool and all included in existing licensing. And again, that's an example that was could have been K-12 or higher ed, right? Everyone gets memos they're supposed to read, and time is an issue for everyone. So getting that done quickly and efficiently is
I just
really
got
important.
this new.
All right, we're going to jump to the next one here. So this is about finding something on your computer that you don't know where it is. I think that some people, you may have saved a file, you don't know where it is. Maybe, right, a teacher is out and they've left their computer at school and somebody needs to access a lesson plan, for example, and they didn't save it on the share file, which I know everyone should save it on the cloud, but we all know that a lot of teachers don't do that. A lot of faculty members may not do that either. So finding something is important. Here's a prompt we show on the left, and then the output you see on the right, but just finding something on your PC. All right, so I talked a little bit before about a focus session. This takes you through exactly what that looks like. So you can launch Copilot, ask it to create a focus session for a certain amount of time. That it will actually set a timer, and it will put you into do not disturb, so all of the notifications are turned off. And then you can do some work. Obviously, you're in a focus session, so why would you not do work? So hey, draft a lesson plan. this is really cool. And the more specific you are, obviously, in the prompt, the better the output. So this is a very specific request about anemometers, and it tells the grade. Right, so you could say, right, in higher ed, the example, you could, hey, it's an advanced or it's an intermediate or it's introductory college, whatever class, or you could do this here. Hey, we need this for a second grade science class. So it knows, then Copilot knows a little bit about how difficult should this be. It'll even give you the materials, right? So this really lays out for you specifically what you need because you gave it a more specific prompt. All right, I didn't know that this was an important issue, particularly in K-12, until about a year ago we presented this slide and had dialogue with some folks up outside of Seattle. But the as you all know, and this I think happens in public higher ed as well. So anytime there's a board meeting or a public meeting, there have to be minutes published publicly. But the meetings need to not publish personal information. So historically, certainly the feedback we got, even as recently as a year ago, that a lot of this is done manually. So minutes are written up, obviously, during the meeting, and then information needs to be redacted for the public, but the members of the actual meeting get to see emails and phone numbers, but not the public. So getting rid of that has been done with a black marker or a Sharpie. And you do that, you got to look through the document, find everything, write over it, copy it, make sure copying, you still can't see it. If you can't see it, they got to do it again. This is a manual process. We've heard people tell us directly that this is saving them hours per meeting. The fact that you can do this in 5 seconds now. You click on the text actions icon in Snip, the snipping tool, hit quick redact, and it will redact all this information for you automatically. Again, the snipping tool is a free Windows app. It is possible your image doesn't have it. You can always go to the Windows Store and download it for free. Again, we've built it. It's free with Windows. So again, free saves time. Hopefully that's the theme you're seeing today in this. So Paint is another free Microsoft app that we include in our image. Again, if it's not in your image, you have a custom image, you can absolutely go to the Microsoft Store and download it. There's a lot of really cool things you can do in Paint. And I'm actually going to start with the example that's not on this page. I talked to you earlier about how you could create a picture. So you can still do that in a theme of your choosing. You can see here at the bottom, make an image of the changing season in the impressionistic style. You can absolutely do that. You can also use Paint to remove backgrounds now. So you can say, hey, can you, or actually you don't have to say anything. You can click on an icon. If there you see the menu, you can click on an icon and it will remove the background. So potentially this is a scenario in, hey, the students in the background haven't signed the waivers that authorize us to show them faces publicly on our website, for example. So I need to get rid of I need to sort of blur them out or get rid of the background. You can now do this with one click. You don't have to do this in Photoshop or something else. One click in Paint does that for you. So Paint, again, free app. I have talked this is not free. This would be part of Copilot for Modern Work. I talked about this recap. I did want to highlight a few different things in Teams and meetings. So I use this all the time. You may have heard extra kudos if you remember at the beginning that I said I cover Latin America as well. I do not speak Spanish, which is unfortunate. But in a meeting, if the people in my meeting are talking in Spanish, as would be natural in much of Latin America, I can actually have it do closed captioning in English. So I can say, hey, in the settings, I can say that for this meeting, the spoken language is Spanish, and I want my output that I see at the bottom of closed captions to be in English. So I do this very often, and obviously you can do that in other ways as well. Other languages, I should say. My point here is that when you have so many higher ed institutions and K-12 institutions that have so many different languages spoken. Obviously very difficult for a given teacher or professor to be able to speak all of those languages. The ability to use Teams to do that for you. You can even have a meeting with a parent this way, right? As a K-12 teacher, you could say, okay, they don't speak English, I don't speak their language. We can have this in Teams so we can both understand each other perfectly and have the dialogue that I'm supposed to have and want to have with the parents. So this is an extremely powerful tool that's usable. I literally am using this almost every day in my job, and I know educators have talked about the power of this for translations when we talk to them. Even districts that don't even use our tools, they're like, oh my goodness, I need this particular tool for what we do throughout the year in K-12. All right, so I'm going to pause here. I'm going to start to move into a little bit of what you can do now. The first thing you could do now, or not right now, but soon, is go to this link, or you can write it out, and there's a lot of courses here. Again, we had a little bit less than an hour we're going to be talking today. This gives you on your own time to learn a lot more about AI and dive into places that are most interesting for you. All right, I'm going to pause here. Any questions? All right, sounds like not. I'm going to close out here. I have a couple more slides for you. So again, to wrap up, the platform really matters for AI, right? You have to have identity, you have to have compliance in place, you have to limit where people can go and what they're doing. We've talked about a lot of tools that will save time and are documented to have saved time. But the reality is you need to have this framework in place. We also recommend that you have web management in place, cloud management in place, sorry, so that you can manage everything that you're doing across your environment in a simplified way. So I'm going to come, I'm starting with that and ending with that because we can't talk about AI properly without talking about that. Obviously, these are the tools Microsoft provides to do that. And even like I talked about the New York City example earlier, New York City has Chrome devices for students, but they're still managing, all Windows and Chrome and iOS and Mac OS and Android and Windows all from one pane of glass using Intune. And it has provided massive time savings and for them. And obviously Intune is included in A3 and A5 licensing. So they didn't have to buy other products. They could use the licensing they already owned to do that. And then lastly, I'll end here by saying, obviously, Windows 10 into support is on top of mind for a lot of folks. I know it's 13 months away, less than 13 months away. But there are some solutions available. For example, in many scenarios, Microsoft is paying for proof of concepts, or if for people that are struggling to get from 10 to 11 and need some help. So again, that is in continuing with our theme today, that would be free. And again, I can't approve people over a Teams meeting, but the reality is that in most scenarios is true. And so let's make sure that everyone, as they want to move to AI and use AI more, that getting to 11, which has more AI capability, and getting new devices as you probably need to do that. How can we help you on that journey? So absolutely do that. And then for anybody who wants to learn more about Intune as well, as I would say, those are the stepping stones to getting to these tools. And then lastly, I'm going to hand this back over to Steven here at the end, but the reality is, how can OETC and Microsoft help you to implement some of the things we talked about or answer any questions you have about AI? All right, Steven, over to you.
Fantastic, Dale. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate the webinar. Open the floor for any additional questions before we wrap up today. If not, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your time.